Hi everyone, good day. I am Raisel Arda Maulaw and now I am going to discuss about database application security model. So database application security model. At the end of this discussion, we are going to define what is database and why it is important, explain database security concepts, describe the different types of user in the database environment and the distinct purpose of each, identify and explain the concepts of five security models, list the most commonly used application types, implement the most common application security models, describe the threats of database security, and last is understand the use of data encryption within the database application. So in today's world, we need everything secured, whether it is our mobile phone, computer, vehicle, or almost anything. So before we start discussing database, all about this database and application security model, first we need to discuss first what is database. So database is a collection of information stored in computer. It is also a collection of related data files used by an application, and in application, it solves a problem, perform a specific business function. Application user is user within the application schema, and then the security, it is being free from danger. So now we're going to discuss what is database security. So database security is defined as the process by which confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the database can be protected. And also it is a mechanism that protects the database against intentional or accidental threats. And then it is a protection from malicious attempts to steal or modify data. So why we need database security? So if there is no security to database, data will be easily corrupted, and it is important to restrict access to the database from authorized users to protect sensitive data. So we have here three main aspects, which is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and also threats to database, which is the loss of integrity, loss of availability, and loss of confidentiality. So first, let us define confidentiality. If we say confidentiality, it is the protection to the database from unauthorized user. It ensures that users are allowed to do the things they are trying to do, and no one can read the data or a communication unless we want them to. And also, encryption, it is a technique or a process by which the data is encoded in such a way that only the authorized user are able to read the data. For example, is the employee should not see the salaries of their managers. So, of course, it's the example of confidentiality, because employees should not, yes, it's correct that employees should not see the salaries of their managers. And the next is the integrity. So in integrity, no one can manipulate the data unless if someone wants them to. So it is protecting the database from authorized users, and then ensure what users are trying to do is correct. The example of integrity is no one can manipulate the data unless if someone wants them to, and then protecting the database from authorized users and ensure that what users are trying to do is correct. Example is an employee should be able to modify his or her own information. And then also we have here the availability. We can access the data, conduct our processing, use our communication capabilities when we want to. It is also the database must have not unplanned downtime, and also, authorized users should be able to access data from legal purpose as necessary. Example of availability is payment orders regarding taxes should be made on time by the tax law. And then we have here the relationship between confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So if we have that relationship with confidentiality, integrity, and availability, of course, our data is secured. And then next, we will be discussing types of user. So first type of user is the application administrator. It is administering app user. No specific database privilege is required. And also we have here the application owner of application related database object. And then the application user, it use application, and the database administrator. And the next is the database user. It is user with database privileges. Proxy user, it is the database user with specific rules and privileges, isolating app users from database. Schema owner, it is owner of database objects. And also virtual user. Now we will be discussing security models. So first is the access metric model. It represents domain entities, which is the object and the subject. So columns represent objects, where rows represent subject. So objects, of course, table, views, procedures, database, and objects, where subject is users, rules, privileges, modules. And also we have here the authorization set. So this is an example of security model. So as we can see here, user 1 and user 2. We have also here the table 1, table 2, and table 3. So user 1 can read and write in table 1, whereas in table 2, user 1 can write only. And if we can also see here ang user 2, in table 1, she or he can read only, and also in table 2. So next, security model. As mentioned earlier, first we mentioned the access matrix model, and the second one is the access modes model. So it is based on take-grant model. Usually uses object and subjects, and it specify access modes, which is the static and dynamic modes. So we have also here the access levels. This is subject has access to objects at its level and all levels below it. So now we will be discussing the static and dynamic modes. So here the access mode of static modes are the following. First is the use. Use is allow the subject to use the object without modifying the object. Read is allows the subject to read the contents of the object. Update allows the subject, of course, to modify the contents of the object. And then create, it allows the subject to add instances to the object. And last is delete, of course. It allows the subject to remove instances to the object. And then next, we have dynamic modes. The following are the access modes. So first is the grant. Grant allows the subject to grant any static access mode to any other subject. Second one is to revoke. Revoke allows the subject to revoke, of course, a granted static access mode from the subject. And then next is the delegate. Delegate allows the subject to grant the grant privileges to other subject. And last is the abrogate. Abrogate allows the subject to grant the revoke privilege to other subject. Next is the types of application, client-server applications. So in client-server application, it consists of client program that consumes services provided by the server program. Also, the client requests services from the server by calling function in the server applications. So, client-server application provides a flexible and scalable structure, and it has three components, which is the user interface, business logic, and the data access. And also, components usually spread out over several tiers, which is the minimum of 2 and normally 4 to 5. This is the model of client-server application. So, it is the physical architecture of a client-server application. So, as we can see here, na ay application client and then the client also. and it's passed to the user interface. Go to business logic, data access, and of course database server, and go to server and back. Then next, web applications is evolved with the rise of .com and web-based companies. It uses the web to connect communication to the server, and also web application uses HTML pages creating using ActiveX, Java Apples, and Beans, ESP, which is the active server pages. So here now, this is the model of web application. Started with the client, web browser, web server, application server, business logic, and database server. So this model is the logical components of web application architecture. And then also, as we can see here, this is the physical structure of a web application. Start with the web browser. Of course, we have client here, and then go to the internet. And after internet, web server, application server, business logic, and of course database server, and then the server. Next is the data warehouse application. So data warehouse application used in decision support application. It is also a collection of many types of data taken from a number of different databases and typically composed of database server. And then access by software application also, or reporting applications in OLAP, which is the online analytical processing. So this is the database security and auditing model. So we have here OLAP application, database server, go to transfer data, and as you can see here in the right side, database server, and the database server, and it's transform data, go to database server, and also OLAP application. And then next, let's discuss the database security models. So before we proceed, first we must define what is security models. So we all know that security models is the formal description of security policies. Security models are useful tools for evaluating and comparing security policies, and also security models allows us to test security policies for completeness and consistency. They describe what mechanisms are necessary to implement a security policy. And then, of course, if we have security models, we have also the elements. So first is the subjects. Subjects are entities that requires access to objects, and then of course, the objects were entities for which access request is being made by subjects, and then access modes, type of operation performed by subject on object, which is you can write, read, create, on, etc. And then of course policies, enterprise-wide accepted security rules. And then authorizations, it is a specification of access modes for each subject on each object. And then administrative rights, who has rights in system administration and what responsibilities administrators have. And then last is the actions, basic working assumptions. I think that's all in my report, ma'am. Thank you.